Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about a movie that I watched in the past. It's actually the far distant past, called Princess Mononoke. The reason why I want to talk about this one is because at the time when it came out, it was I think the second highest grossing film in Japan, next to Titanic, which is actually saying something because like one of America's number one exports is entertainment per se. So I want to talk about why that's so interesting, the truth layers that are on top of that actually are in Western culture, and maybe point out some things that seem either right or wrong, depending upon your background. Bring to light some of the hidden gems that they have inside of this wonderful Studio Ghibli film. So if you have not seen Princess Mononoke, this might be a little over your head. I'll try briefly to summarize the story, and then we'll go from there. So what it is there's this Prince Ashitaka. They start out in a village. There is a demon that comes in. He fights with the demon, who turns out to be a giant spirit god pig covered in like worms or snakes or something. He fights it. He gets a curse mark on his arm, and then he has to go east and find out what caused the boar to be so angry, specifically an iron ball lodged in his belly. So he goes over there, and then he finds an ironworks town. He meets a bunch of more god creatures. He meets Princess Mononoke, which is Mononoke itself actually means vengeful spirit. So the whole movie, if you want to look at it this way, it's called Princess Vengeful Spirit. And she is just that. She was raised by the wolves, and she wants to declare war on the town for taking all the forest from her. It's a giant conspiracy about the emperor paying a mountain of gold to anybody who can take the head off the forest spirit, which is very interesting. And so it's how Ashitaka, who is the prince, goes to the east and figures all this out and tries to unite people. Because he is the epitome of the hero in the hero story. So I think that's a brief summary of it. So this whole thing starts out in this remote village. And you find out in this village, they're the Amishi people. And they have been driven off to the end by the emperor. And they are like the epitome of a stagnant culture. They are not growing. He's like, the one character is like, we grow weaker and weaker with every generation. So they're stagnating, and they need something new. They need something to refresh. That's the example of like a totalitarian culture. Maybe not that, but they're so ingrained in their rules, they don't branch out for creativity or visit other cultures, and that can stagnate for a lot of reasons. So that's like the normal in the hero story. Then the boar comes in. The boar comes in as a demon, and it's huge. And Ashitaka fights it. He fights it with a bow and arrow. And the thing that really gets me is like, as it's chasing him, it sees the feminine, it sees his little sister, and charges after them instead, even though he was right in front of them, because they're easy to catch. So that's kind of mirroring the Garden of Eden story, where Satan, that comes into the garden, goes after the feminine, because it's weaker and easier to get. So that's when Ashitaka shoots an arrow into its eye, gets some of the snakes wrapped around its arm, and when he gets cursed like that, he actually gets demonic powers at the same time. Like when he fires arrows later, they're taking people's heads off and stuff like that. He has ridiculous power, but it's controlled power. So Ashitaka gets kicked out of Eden, because that's where everything has its place, right in there. And he has to go east. That's the curse that's put on him. Because he has that cursed mark, he is basically condemned to die. But he can rise to meet his fate if he wants. So this is a very masculine trait. You want to find out why. You want to go, anybody who can withstand a why can withstand almost any how. But I really like the whole concept of because he defended the feminine, therefore he was cursed and has ridiculous power. But it's not a power he really craves, because he knows what's going on with him. Whereas in the Eden story that we have in the West, Adam points the finger, it wasn't me, God. It was the woman that ate the apple, and then she points the finger to the snake, and that's the natural progression of blame, I guess. But in this one, Adam stands up. He's not silent in the garden. He tries to tell the snake or the foreign object to go away, and he fights it correctly. And because of that, he is cursed, and he is marked for death. So that's when he goes east. And because of his character, that drives him by a negative agency, which is what all this is. It's pushing him out of the nest, roughly speaking. He eventually, because you see a little snippet of the wolves terrorizing the Irontown supply chain, and then you see Ashitaka picking up people that are broken and carrying them, because he wants to get them back to town to heal them. That's because of his natural good spirit of wanting to help and share the world and reunite to make things better. That leads him into the Irontown, which is the source of his problems, because he is true to his character. That seems pretty good. When he goes into the town, he learns that that is exactly where the source came from. And he also learns the conflict, because the conflict is there's these giant sentient animal gods that are there, and they can talk. You can look at that as like mankind's relationship with nature before he started focusing on technologies, something like that. So he could have more of an intimate relationship with the beasts, like this little guy on my lap. But as time goes on and humanity continues to conquer, the distance grows greater between like the transcendent or the template of Eden that was already put here, and we ourselves focusing on ourselves. That's sort of in the Tower of Babel story. As things get higher and higher, as you get further and further away from the ground, you tend to topple, or you forget how to communicate with those that are on the ground, which are literally your staple for life. So in that Irontown, he has a conflict where his arm that's cursed wants to literally rip the commander lady's head off, like it tries to attack her on its own. He holds it back, and he subdues the hate within him, because these other beasts, the other beasts, when they were cursed, they let it overtake them. They let their emotion overtake them. But Ashitaka's different. He keeps it in control. He keeps the barrier around it. That all changes once the feminine is introduced in it. Princess Mononoke, the princess of the vengeful spirit princess, however you want to look at that. Because now the masculine does what he does with the feminine. He sees her beauty. He sees her potential. And the thing about the feminine is they can always offer the masculine more, even though they can't be greater. And that's pretty replete in a lot of the mythic stories. Now, obviously, modern culture changes that a little bit. But in the mythic stories, that's kind of how it was. And she is fierce, man. But he does best her in combat. And he can see the beauty beneath her wild structure. And so his agency goes from finding out what's wrong, because he found that already, and then maybe trying to fix it. But people are complex, because Lady Eboshi, the lady who's in charge of it, she also houses lepers and wants to make their lives better. And takes care of brothel girls, takes them out of like the sex trade, and wants to make them, structured people of society doing something with themselves. And she also took the forest away from the forest spirit. So which one's greater? People are just complex. What's really neat is the feminine characters fight. So this is like the vengeful spirit of nature. And the mayor of the town, right, Lady Eboshi. The thing about the feminine is they offer bounty, but they also can offer chaos. And they can offer death. Like, life and death is in them. And so this is like they're gatekeepers of life. My wife asked me the other day, why do we all laugh at men more than women? And I'm like, well, because you are the gatekeeper of life. You're the ones who say no. You are what we work for. You are the story to be mastered. We want to conquer. You want to be the one that is conquered. You want to be known. You are to be taken more seriously. You are more frail. There's a lot of reasons. Like, men are meant to take punches. And so you have two of those combating over what has roughly the right to continue on with life. Is it the nature, or is it the technology, or is it the ironworks? So Ashitaka knocks them both out, gets shot in the process, and takes the vengeful spirit back to her people. They nurse him back to health. Because she is thankful, she actually responds to his affection a little bit. But she does not forget where she came from. She is a wolf child. The other interesting thing is Lady Eboshi, the captain of the other town. She is good to her word. She made a promise to somebody, and so she goes on a hunting party to take off the head of the forest spirit, which they actually do. And that's like, instead of fighting against the demons and the spirits, you take that off, you destroy the possibility of nature fighting back. And so she took its head off, whatever that was. She wanted to eliminate it because of an oath, which she is as good as her word. She's an honorable person. So she did just that. And that's like the ultimate severance of man from nature. This is maybe when our history started. We started writing things down. We started getting cognizant of ways we can make things better at the expense of other things. That's like the knowledge of suffering, something like that, and taking it seriously because we know we are vulnerable, so are other people. And these movies are so cool because, like, you're watching it, and why is it interesting? Because it has other layers that are imprinted upon you. They're etched on your very being, sure, and they're also etched on your cultural template as you grow up, especially if you're in the Judeo-Christian worldview, which you kind of have no choice to at least have some of that if you grew up in America, because the Constitution undergirds a lot of our laws. So you can, like, reverse track that back through the law, keep asking why enough, and eventually you get, well, we're endowed with our Creator by certain unalienable rights, endowed by our Creator. Like, God comes into this equation. But one of the reasons why Ashitaka is so good is because he's like the heroic reuniting element. So even though the Four Spirits' head is cut off, even though Eboshi wants to destroy the spirits, even though he was betrayed and they're trying to kill him, he still seeks to reunite things because he's already mastered the demon in him. He's already mastered the curse that's trying to control him. And he's trying to help San become a human again, because that's what she really is. He can see that, but like no one else can. They all demonize her. They think she's just a wolf. She's just a vengeful spirit. She's not even a person. But he sees beyond that, and that's like the agency in the masculine. You see beauty and you make it beautiful. The way you make it beautiful is you tell it it's beautiful, and you act like it is, and you act like it's something worth striving for. I think one of my favorite scenes is when they're holding up the forest spirit at the end, offering it to him, like, please accept, let's reunite. And he puts his armor on San, which is Princess Mononoke. And earlier, Lady Eboshi had her arm taken off. And that's an interesting relationship paradigm, because I forget the big samurai guys, but Lady Eboshi and him, that's like one couple. And then San and Ashitaka's another. And he's trying to reunite with them. Meanwhile, the other side, that couple relationship is purely monetary. There's no affection whatsoever. It's all business. She would not accept him anyway, because he would never rise to her standards. She's like an alpha female. She doesn't need the things the typical feminine needs. She's interested more in glory, maybe, than other things. She is focused on being maternal without involvement by the masculine. That's one of the reasons why I don't like the movie Frozen very much. It's because it's kind of like that, and Frozen has very bad messages for young ladies, and I got 2 daughters, so that's what that is. The last thing I want to mention is the monk in that movie. I forget what his name is. Sansa, something like that. It's typical for somebody who lives day to day and lives by a monetary system to busy themselves so much with plans and how to make money and this kind of stuff and interest in the material. In order to do the right thing, this monk had to be faced with literally death swimming up around him. And he's like, we're going to die anyway, so why not? Because he had no other choice. Besides that, he was living through his own means, and he trusted himself. He was playing both sides when it came to the samurai and when it came to Irontown. But when faced with mortality, things kind of change a little bit. You're like, oh, you know what? What is the use of gold if you can't spend it? So at the end of the story, you have Ashitaka, you have San, you have everybody living happily ever after. But it's changed a little bit because the hero's story is a spiral. So things don't go back to normal. The Forest Spirit's not there. Boars, the other gods, they're not as they were. But we still have a relationship with nature. I think it ends very well. So it began a little bit like a little hints to the Eden story, but it ends well because things unite as far as man understanding its relationship with nature, at least a little bit, and the vengeful spirit, which is Princess Mononoke, is calmed and has a relationship through the hero. The hero stands up and unites. So what does that look like? What does a uniting hero that existed in our time period that we have a story of, what's that look like? Well, it's very tough to get away from the Christ element here. That is what Christ attempted to do, which is why I think this appeals so much to the West, as it does. He attempted to unite everybody to the transcendent through the commonality of his death, which he shares with us. So as Ashitaka went through a lot of that stuff, fought demons, fought both sides, reconciled both sides, he even was willing to endure the curse, as long as that took whatever it took, just to reunite things together, just to quell the anger and reestablish relationship. That sounds like Christ. And the more and more I watch these movies, the more every single story, which I'll attempt to point out here, will point back to the one that's true, like the true myth, per C.S. Lewis. And there's a lot of interesting things that deal with the masculine and the feminine specifically, which I think I'll make another video of, which are in every single story, like how a woman should act for you to feel that's right, no matter what the culture, and how a male should act for you to see that that's right. And we're seeing the outworking of not doing that in the Hollywood movies at the moment, because people aren't going to watch them. So why would you want to watch something that's not helpful and doesn't appeal to you? That's pretty apparent what's going on there. So anyway, I think that'll do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you next time. Take care.